All right, it is now 8 o'clock. I see we have some people here, so hello. Hope everyone had a great weekend and a good Monday. Before I get into the questions, I just want to mention really quickly to please check your group feeds, as I've made some posts recently that I think would be helpful to everyone. One specific post that I've made is about your gut microbiome and how that affects your taste buds, cravings, and which foods you can eat to change that biome away from craving sugar and fat and more towards healthful choices. So please check that out. I'm not going to get into an extended discussion about it right here, um, but I think that's a worthy post. And like I've mentioned in that post that I've been doing that myself. So I've started to eat sauerkraut every day and up my Greek yogurt a little bit. And if I can find kimchi, I'm going to give that a try since I like spicier foods too. And if I can, would like to try kefir. I don't know how I'm going to like liquid yogurt though, taste wise. I don't usually like to drink my calories. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to the questions. I did want to mention I do have the Q&A app turned on the right-hand side. You should be able to see it in the Hangout. There is a delay, though, between when you ask a question and when I see it. So please, if you have a question that wasn't submitted to the thread, please submit it now or whenever you think of it, and I will try to answer it before the end of the Hangout. All right, so the submitted questions. The first question comes from Danny, who saw a documentary about people that want to lose more than 100 pounds, and that when they pass the 100-pound mark, there's a strain on their heart. The documentary said something about the heart being used to pumping so much blood that it now pumps too much blood, and you've thinned out, and that can lead to heart problems, basically like an overuse problem where it's used to pumping a higher volume, but your body's smaller, so it doesn't know what to do. Danny wants to know if there's any validity to this, as she's already worried about her cardiovascular health and isn't sure about checking with her doctor. So that's an interesting question. I'm not sure which particular documentary you're speaking about. It doesn't sound like one that I've seen. So without having seen it or without knowing what source that's coming from, I can't really specifically comment. I feel like maybe I heard something similar about people that were like super morbidly obese. That's like 600 pounds plus weight, where they have heart problems there because their heart's a muscle, and that becomes incredibly large to be able to push that kind of volume. I don't know that it would impact someone with say 100, 200 pounds to lose. That doesn't really put you in super morbidly obese. I looked around. I couldn't find anything concrete about a documentary about that. But since you mentioned your doctor, I do think it's a really good idea to involve your doctor in your weight loss. Normal, healthy individuals they recommend a yearly checkup. But if you're attempting to lose weight and you're making changes in your life, I think it's the smart thing to do is to involve your doctor, let them know. And part of that can be a little bit more frequent checkup to monitor your health markers. Health markers are common things like blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose levels, fasting glucose levels, things like that. When you're eating in a calorie deficit, making better food choices and losing fat, all of those health markers should be improving. So it would be helpful to kind of have a baseline. And if you're doing everything right to lose weight and keep it off and have it be a long-term habit rather than like a fad diet, those health markers should definitely be improving. But if you have something to compare against and they're not, there's something wrong. And that's why you'd want to have your doctor involved in the process, at least in the beginning, and take every other month or something like that, once a month. So I'd say if you're concerned about that, start getting frequent checkups and make sure that your health markers are improving rather than declining. That could be a sign that, not that you're doing anything wrong with your health and fitness, but there could be something else going on that's been revealed by the changes you've made. So that is an important reason to kind of have your doctor involved. So with that said, there are some cases that I'm aware of where losing weight or gaining weight can cause heart problems. So an example of that would be in the case of rapid weight loss. Two examples would be due to bariatric surgery or a crash diet, where you take off a lot of weight very quickly. There could be some possible heart complications. The opposite side of the coin is rapid weight regain. We see this we as a society see this in cases when people are recovering from, say, anorexia. You can't have them regain weight too rapidly. An even more prolific example of this would be post-famine in Europe after World War II. After the war ended, people were able to eat larger portions again and a greater variety of food. And many people died being refed from starvation because it was too fast. And what they found was that rapidly regaining weight, they are at risk for heart attacks if their weight gain is not controlled and slow and steady and it's progressive. It can't just be going from starvation, which you'd be in anorexia starvation or crash diet starvation. You can't go from that to the opposite end of the spectrum, above maintenance calories to gain weight. You have to slowly take it up. My understanding is that that's due to the electrolyte imbalance. That's magnesium, potassium, sodium levels. The combination of those are your electrolyte balance. And when those get out of whack, it's basically shuts your heart down. You have a heart attack. This is kind of a little bit beyond my scope as to what my level of knowledge is. I said I have read some things. I am aware about how some of that works, at least at a layman's level. But if that's something you're concerned about with your cardiovascular health as you lose weight, or how you're losing weight, what affects that, please do make your doctor aware and ask them to monitor your health markers on a regular basis. That way, if you're concerned, someone else will be looking in, because that's not something that you can monitor. I can monitor for you. So that is important to take care of that if you're concerned. Even if you're not concerned, it still may be important to take care of that for you. I know when I first got started, I was 410 pounds, and I was basically getting a checkup every other week because they expected me to have diabetes like tomorrow. And once I got started, they were doing regular check-ins every 2 weeks to make sure that I wasn't dropping weight too fast, and that my health markers were improving, and they were. So, all right, on to the next question, and this is also from Danny. Danny was wondering if room temperature really does affect sleep. Danny found an app that wants to control the heating and cooling system in her house when she sleeps, and it wants to change the room temperature for her bedroom to a range somewhere between 65 degrees and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. For those of you that use Celsius, I'm not going to convert right now. Sorry. I probably should have done that in my notes, and I'll try to remember for next time to convert anytime we talk about degrees. But the answer is yes. The temperature of your sleeping environment can affect your sleep, and it can affect it negatively and positively. I mentioned in the sleep audit post that you may want to lower the temperature in your room a little bit below what you have as your normal room temperature for when you're awake, and this can help you fall asleep and stay asleep. The primary problem with that is that what's optimal for one person, that temperature, is not the same for another person. That's probably why the app is giving you a range, so you kind of have to experiment and see which one works and which one doesn't. And that's a pretty large range. I know that at 65 degrees in the house, I'm shivering, but at 72, I'm comfortable. But if I'm laying down with covers on, I'm probably too hot. So anecdotally, I definitely do fall asleep faster and sleep better when my bedroom is much colder. I usually keep my house at 70, 72 in the wintertime. But when I go to bed, we set it to 68, 66, around there or so. But like anything, the extremes are where you can see problems. And like I said before, the extremes are going to differ person to person. So if you have too large of a temperature difference, it can cause you to wake up in the middle of the night and right in the middle of your sleep cycle. So a small drop a small drop in opposite of that can cause you to fall right to sleep. The problem is waking up in the middle of your sleep cycle. So you go, and I'm not an expert on sleep cycles, but the general thing is you go between periods of where you're coming down into rest period, and then it's called REM sleep, rapid eye movement. I believe that's where dreaming happens. So if you're too cold, you have a tendency to have your REM cycle, which is where you're dreaming and your eyes are moving. That's interrupted, and that's not good for you. That's where most of the benefit, I believe, is from your sleep happens. So you don't want that to be interrupted. So this is one thing where you're really going to need to experiment and play around with the ideal temperature. Another consideration, if you're sharing a bed with someone, that your ideal temperature for sleeping may not be their ideal temperature for sleeping. I know some hotels in Europe have where even if it's one bed, there are multiple sets of blankets and sheets so that people can basically automatically adjust what they're comfortable sleeping in from there. I think that's a great idea. I wish more places in the U.S. would do that. I know that I like to cover up in blankets, and I know that my wife basically sleeps with her feet sticking out of the bottom, and that I can't even do that in the summer. I have to wear socks in the summer. I don't know why my feet are just cold. So, um, so that covers the already asked questions. Let me check and go through the groups and the Q&A portion. I'll see if any other questions have been asked. All right. I'm glad Photocracy was working. A little bit earlier, they sent out the year in review that basically shows how much weight you lifted, how many miles you traveled, things like that. And it was their servers were a little bit overloaded because that's a popular thing. And they have the options to like share that to Facebook and Twitter, and it was just all over the place. All right, I don't see any in that group. Well, I'm glad I got the link right this week. I don't know if you saw, but I was cut out caffeine, and it was a rough couple of days there right after the New Year. But I'm better now. I'm still not having any caffeine, but I'm wide awake, so it's an improvement. All right, I am not seeing any additional questions beyond those two across the link. And I don't see any in the Q&A box. So real quick, those of you that have worked with me for an extended period of time, any question I've been asked in the Hangout, I've basically written notes about it. And what I'm doing is I'm compiling all of them into an ebook that I'll give you guys a link to on my site once it's done. I'm almost there. It's like 35 pages of questions and answers. And that's removing all the questions that were basically the same thing. So I'm going to put it in like a PDF file that will have like a table of contents with page numbers. So if you're just looking you have a basic question and you can kind of check the table of contents and scroll right to it rather than looking through the whole book. Because it's not like a story or a book, or it doesn't like flow. It's just basically broken down into categories with all the questions. So I'm working to get that done as soon as possible. It's probably going to be a lot of editing and things like that, but I'm hoping next week or two, fingers crossed. But well, other than that, that's all I have. I don't see any other questions. But as always, I know that for most people, once the Hangout ends, that's when a question pops in your head. You can either post it, send it to me. You can wait till next week if it's not pressing. But other than that, everyone have a great night, and I will talk to you soon.